Hello, Sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking, of course, the Manchester United protest, MLS bangers and results, art theft, El Trafico, CCL, UCL, Inter, Jesse Marsch, Shep Messing, Argo, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mossy, a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire, and as always, a soccer savant. Mossy, how are you doing on this Monday, May 3rd of the year 2021?
I am doing well. It's been an eventful past few days for the stat man. I got vaccinated late last week. That was the good news. The bad news.
Well, I mean, listen, you don't have to virtue signal all over the place. All right. It doesn't make you any better or worse than anybody else out there. I mean, but congratulations, I guess. Is that what you're fishing for here? Would you like a congratulations?
Absolutely.
Okay. Congratulations. Did you get your first shot or second shot, or you do the one and done shot?
First dose. I got to go back May 20th for the second one.
Okay. And how did you react? You're a young, fit man.
Felt great.
No problems. No problems. Well, wait till the second one. We'll see how that one goes. No, that's good. And everybody's got different ideas and opinions out there and stuff like that. I too am vaccinated, and if that's something that you feel is good, go for it. Go forth and vaccinate. It's obviously making a dent and changing the things, which is enabling us to head in a positive direction, both on and off the soccer field, most importantly in life. What else, Mossy? What else?
On the downside, I've been having some car troubles. I had to take the car into the shop where it remained all weekend. And, you find out who your friends are, because it meant that last night after we were done with our MLS coverage, I needed a ride home. And it was quite the struggle to find somebody to give me a lift. Everybody had a story of, no, I'm going this way. I got to get home, the kids, But finally, our good friend Adam Inman stepped up and was kind enough to.
Well, what's wrong with your car?
Issue with the brake lights.
Oh, my goodness. How long is this? I mean, do you bike at all? I'm about to go on a bike ride here. And I know in Los Angeles, nobody really walks or bikes a whole lot. But I'm actually going to get on my bike. Do you have a bike?
I don't. I don't go bike riding. The expression, it's like riding a bike, and doesn't work for me.
It's not for you. What have you been watching, Mossy? Anything interesting over the last week?
Very into this new HBO show, Mayor of Easttown, starring Kate Winslet. I highly recommend it. Now, you have to wait for it to be over, I know, so you can binge it all. But once it's over, I'll let you know. And I definitely recommend you checking it out.
Well, it's funny you would mention that, because I once again have broken well, I guess it's not a hard and fast rule anymore, because I continually break it. But I don't do it on purpose. A lot of times what will end up happening is I don't realize, because in this day and age, they don't make it as clear as it should be as to what is episodal, what isn't, what is started and finished, and to your point, I know sometimes you mention you watch things and it may have another season or it may not have another season. That's ridiculous. Either stop it or don't. And I recognize that there's business and everything involved here. But so I've a couple of things that I've had my eye on. One, I'm in the middle of this is a robbery which goes into art theft that happened in Boston a couple decades ago, and all the intrigue about that. And then another one called Pray, Obey, and Kill, which is a documentary, multiple episodes, and I have one more that's coming. And so, yes, I am beholden to the man here, and that I'm waiting for the final. It might be the final 2 episodes here, and it's a documentary about a murder that happened in Sweden a while ago, and in kind of like a very mysterious, cultish type of situation. I do recommend that. And then, I oftentimes go back and watch different movies. One of my favorite movies is the Ben Affleck movie Argo. And so now I know a lot of people have watched out there, and it's always good. And I will watch it no matter when it's on. I think it was really, really well done, and a really, really interesting story for those that haven't seen it, about the CIA and a plan that they hatched to get six or seven stranded citizens out of Tehran, and the way that they went about doing it with the help of Hollywood and everything like that. Anyway, it's a really fascinating true story based on a true story. So that was my viewing for the week. Anything else you want to add before we move on here, Mossy?
That's it.
All right, listen, all sorts of stuff happening when it comes to soccer on the field, and I guess more importantly off the field. And we're not burying the lead. I know the headlines were about the Manchester United and Liverpool game being canceled because of the protests and the situation there. We will talk about that when we get to our second segment, but we are going to kick it off with a more locally and nationally U.S. focused and U.S. and Canada focused look at MLS, because there was all sorts of stuff going on when it came to the actual soccer that was going on. Some incredible goals. I mean, it seems that each week, Mossy, we are given these gifts of wonderful goals to celebrate, and whether it's an OG like Nani with these back heel type of situations, or whether it's a young Caden Clark and these 17-year-olds that are doing it. It just continues to roll on, and that's a good thing. Any league wants highlights, and any soccer league, we all know the most difficult thing to do in our game is score goals. And so that we are having goals and that we are having them at the rate and the quality in which we are seeing, that's good. It's good for us from a television perspective. It's good from a messaging and advertising and marketing type of perspective out there. And it's good because it shows the quality and the entertainment aspect of what is going on. Is that where you want to start, Mossy? Where would you like to start when we go into this?
No, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that Nani Golazzo coming in a 3-0 Orlando City win over a Cincinnati side that spent a lot of money in the offseason, and they're still horrible. So Jaap Stam still has a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's easy to pile on Cincinnati, and it's not that they don't deserve it. Once again, I say that each and every time. Yes, MLS is a different structure. And by the way, that has been highlighted certainly over the last couple of weeks. Right or wrong, it is a structure that is based on parity and manufactured parity. It's also a structure which, more so than I think any league in the world, provides you the opportunity to, at the very least, even right out of the chute as an expansion team, be competitive. And we've seen teams like Minnesota. We've seen teams like Chivas USA or other teams along the line that have come out in a real type of either on purpose soft launch type of approach, and it's been reflected in the poor results and not being competitive right away, or they've tried like a Cincinnati and it just has not worked. And I think there is an added criticism and an added value to that criticism and fairness to that criticism when it is done in specifically a league like MLS that bends over backwards to enable you to at least be competitive. And right now, Cincinnati is a continuation of last year when they weren't competitive, and this year they have yet to be competitive. And it's not for lack of money. They have spent some money. So then you got to look at leadership. Now, it should also be said that it's not necessarily just a team that's continuing on in poor form, because you have someone like Minnesota that we all thought was going to kick on. They spent money. They've gotten, they're getting new players, and they're sitting here at 0-3. Still early days, and everybody understands that. But this is what we do in sports. We attach value or criticism to things, and yes, we can extrapolate it out, or we like to extrapolate it out. It doesn't always work that way in the long term right now, but certainly some warning signs when it comes to Minnesota, who we thought we were going to be better than so far they have been, and certainly some problems when it comes to a team like Cincinnati that was so bad last year and yet seems to have been unable to rectify the situation, as I said, in a league that bends over backwards to enable you to rectify those situations.
And Minnesota lost to Austin FC, who have won 2 of their first 3 games. So to your point, that there's a team taking advantage of the fact that MLS is conducive to immediate success.
They are, and they're, Austin is in this long line of teams that is coming out and playing a lot of games on the road to begin their season and their inaugural season, and you steel yourself for this onslaught that, first off, it's a new league and you're a new team and you're just getting together, but you're also on the road for a lot of games, oftentimes in preparation for the return and almost the second introduction of your team in a new stadium. But Austin, so far, once again, still early days, but so far so good. They get another win and another road win. Diego Fagundes, who was the poster child for youth development and, for the New England Revolution and for MLS for a certain extent for basically the last decade, has now gone on to I don't know if it's bigger and better things, but he is proving a really good signing. And maybe he just needed a change of scenery, but he's gotten a goal in the last couple of games and will go down in history as the first goal ever for the Oaks. Somebody asked me about the Oaks because I called it the Oaks the other day, and I don't even know if they do. And for those that don't know, the new Austin FC team, their badge, their crest, their logo is two intertwining oaks. And there's a whole long list of reasons and details as to why it is. But I like calling them the Oaks. And so when I talk about the Loons up there in Minnesota, I think that fits. And, I think that's a good thing to call them. And so that's what I'm going to call them.
And you mentioned the two 17-year-olds. Yeah, Caden Clark with another wonderful volley in the Red Bulls 2-0 win over Chicago. He had scored a similar goal week 1 against Sporting AC. But the player I am absolutely blown away by is Cade Cowell at San Jose. A goal and 2 assists in their 4-1 win over DC United. San Jose also got a goal from Javier Lachofis Lopez, who is one of the more intriguing signings in MLS this season. He's a young Mexican player who came up with Chivas and was once described as the Mexican Messi. Didn't quite live up to those expectations, but did help Chivas win CCL in 2018 under Matias Almeida. So Matias Almeida has now taken him on as something of a reclamation project. He gets a goal here. Jackson Ewell scored twice. San Jose, just a fun team in general. And Cade Cowell, to me, we talk about the U.S. now being this talent factory. And to me, he's the next one that looks just unbelievable. It's going to be playing for a big European club very soon.
Yeah, I mean, there is that pathway now that is much more clear and set out and much more accessible to European stardom, if you will, because, I only say that because, I'm old enough to have been around when, I don't know, a Juan Agudelo as a teenager was doing great things. And everybody said, oh, this is the future. And it doesn't always work out that way, either when you apply it to what you think is the matriculation up to the national team and being that next goal scorer, or even the pathway that we talk about going over in Europe. Now, this is a different time. And so these 17-year-olds, not only are they good, but they also, I think, are coming into a world that is much more set up for their success and to provide, as I said, better pathways. We were debating this on our MLS set last night. And once again, you are always there and you're kind of privy to all the ridiculousness that goes on. Which goal did you think between the Cade and the Caden's goal was, I guess, better? And I know that's a all-encompassing type of word, but and for those that maybe didn't see it, so the San Jose for I'm getting them confused. Cade Cowell, right? Yes, correct. Cade Cowell. Caden or Caden? There's a Caden, there's a Caden.
San Jose one is Cade Cowell. The Red Bull one is Caden.
Cade Cowell. Both 17-year-olds, both with incredible futures. Now, they look very different. Cade Cowell looks a whole lot more mature than Caden Clark over there in the Red Bulls. Anyway, Cade Cowell over in San Jose took a ball that was played out of the back, turned his man into space, beat him with the speed and the youthful energy that he has, and then everything slowed down for him. And not only did he score the goal, but he went in on the quasi breakaway and was able to put it near post. All of that takes skill. And then on the other side with Caden Clark over there at Red Bulls, and he scored a number of these. So this isn't just a complete anomaly type of situation. He took it out of the air on a wonderful little scissor volley and put it in the goal. And he seems to not only score goals, but score really interesting and beautiful goals out there. Which one do you think made you go ooh and ah more?
It's close. I think I like the Cade Cowell one a little bit better.
Okay.
Now, mind you, neither one is going to win AT&T Goal of the Week honors because it will no doubt be another long distance strike. You've heard me rail many times the incredible bias towards long distance strikes that people have when it comes to that award. It drives me crazy. So look for some goal where some guy just cranked a shot from outside the area and it went in. And of course, that's automatically better than like a well-worked team goal or any play where a guy dribbled past a couple of defenders and slotted it home. But, you know my thoughts on that.
Now, before we get to El Trafico, as we mentioned, we were working yesterday. We're recording this on Monday. We were working Sunday on the Seattle versus Galaxy game, which didn't turn out to be much of a game from a Galaxy perspective, as Seattle thoroughly beat them 3-0. What were your thoughts, Mossy, on this performance from both teams?
Very impressed with Seattle. They've unveiled this 3-4-1-2 formation this year. It's interesting. You're seeing some clubs around the world, some managers suddenly intrigued by a back three. Palmeiras in Brazil, who won the Libertadores last season, playing a back four. Recently, they've switched to a back three. Real Madrid, Zinedine Zidane, after playing a back four all season, he switched to a back three for that first leg against Chelsea. So it's something that's increasingly intriguing managers. And Brian Schmetzer has decided to unveil it this season. And it's working very well so far. I mean, the fact that they have no Jordan Morris and essentially no Nicolas Lodeiro. He came on in the second half yesterday, but the outcome was already settled. And yet they have 7 points from 3 games and are sitting in the top of the Western Conference. So yeah, Seattle, it just shows you how solid the infrastructure is there, that no matter what, they're always going to be good. And yet now they bring Lodeiro back into the mix, so they're going to be even better. So yeah, Seattle, a handful. And yeah, lousy performance by the Galaxy. I mean, would you say they were found out yesterday after wins over Inter Miami and the Red Bulls? Got everybody excited. Was this really them being brought back down to earth?
Well, look, beating the likes of Miami and the New York Red Bulls is very different than beating the likes of Seattle or their next opponent, which is going to be LAFC. And I think they would be the first to admit that. And so it started out great. Before I get to the Galaxy, let me finish up and we'll put a bow on Seattle. They were wonderful. And I think what you really saw was a team that absolutely from top to bottom, every single player and every single staff understands what their identity is. And even that is within, as you mentioned, a time when they are changing up the formation, playing a 3, sometimes 5 in the back. And look, it's a 3-5-2. Just call it 3-5-2. All this other stuff. Okay? It's a 3-5-2. The fact that they are changing up formation, and even within the game, as you mentioned, putting Lodeiro's a sub, but they didn't miss a beat. Everybody knew exactly how they wanted to play. They feasted wide. Brad Smith, I'll tell you what, in that, whether he's actually in the 5 or in a back or in the 5 in the midfield, out wide, I was so impressed with him and with Seattle, because this is obviously something they have talked about, because they did it on a consistent basis. So often you'll see in the game where the ball will go out wide to a wide player, and he or her will hit a cross. It's a aimless, hopeful type of cross, and there's obviously different schools where it's, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Do you just put it in a dangerous spot and expect people to get there, or do you actually pick it out? And time again last night, I saw Brad Smith get his head up and pick out where the cross was going to go. All crosses are not created equal, all right? And some of the best crossers in the game, like a David Beckham, for example, it was by design. He knew where the ball was going. Yes, there are dangerous areas of the field, but a hopeful cross, or a cross that is easy for a defender to cut out or for a goalkeeper to come and get, that is useless. You do all this work to have numerical advantages out wide, or to get yourself into space, or one-on-one beating somebody where now you actually have to hit the cross. Putting it in a dangerous area is relative to who actually is in that area, or who is going to be in that area. And even on Rui Diaz's goal, Brad Smith picked him out. I thought that was really, really good. But you saw two very different teams. A team that is a work in progress with the Galaxy, and a team that knows exactly who they want to be, even though they are starting to change some different things. So Seattle is going to continue to be good. They're even going to get better, like you mentioned. I mean, not too shabby to be able to put on Lodeiro, and that will change the way that they look going forward. So they're off to the races, as is Rui Diaz when it comes to the scoring goals. And there was no doubt as to who the better team was. Now, to the Los Angeles Galaxy. Was this team found out? No, because I think even if you talked to them, they recognized that 2 wins does not a season make. A loss to Seattle, after what I've just said about them, isn't the end of the world as they progress on. But I do think that there was a recognition that all of the excitement and the hoopla, which is justified when it's somewhat, it wasn't just that they were winning. It's also that Chicharito, who had such a horrible year and is a star within this league. Now, he's not an MLS star yet, okay, but he is a star, which is one of the reasons why we pump him up and why we expect so much from him. When he scores 5 goals in the first couple of games, you're damn right that's going to be the story. But once again, I submit this to you, and I think I talked a little bit about this last week. I don't think that there are a lot of teams out there, MLS teams, that would take Chicharito, okay? And in that they look at him being, as a designated player, anything better than they have. There's a couple probably out there that would. Now, because I don't think that a lot of people believe that he is an elite goal scorer in MLS, all right? Good player, wonderful person. I'm happy that he scored. But I think we saw a team that against Seattle that ran out of ideas, ran out of options, and a frustrated Chicharito up top. And if he's not getting consistent service and good service, and look, they didn't have Sebastian Lletget. Cabral's going to come in. The French young French player is going to come in. But I think their biggest problem, to be quite honest right now, continues to be defense. They brought in a new goalkeeper in Bond, and while he won the first 2 games, in both of those games he let up 2 goals. Last night he lets up 3 goals. So 3 + 2 is 5. 5 + 2 is 7. 7 goals in 3 games. If they can't shore up that defense, they're going to have problems, because I don't think that they can. They might want to just run and gun. I don't think they want to, but even if they tried to run and gun, once you shut down Chicharito, you got problems. And we saw at the end of the game, Greg Vanney, the head coach of the Los Angeles Galaxy, almost escorting Chicharito off the field with his arm around his shoulder, because he knows that whether he likes it or not, and that's even up for debate, he's married to Chicharito for this year, unless something ridiculous happens on the transfer market. And so he has to make sure that Chicharito continues to be happy, continues to be confident, and that they are doing the things to feed that player up top. And he's got that's a big lift. That's a big lift right now. And I think the deficiencies that the Galaxy have showed up playing against a good team like Seattle.
Can I mention one more team before we transition to El Trafico?
Sure.
The Galaxy's defeat means RSL, who beat Sporting KC 3-1, now the only team in the league with a perfect record 2-0, much to the delight of their intrepid sideline reporter, Samantha Yarrock. That was my mistake, by the way, in the script. But Rob Stone being the man
yeah. So this is the
did not throw me under the bus.
This is the power of social media, and I guess the frailty. And even the humanity when it comes to those of us that are on television. So to expand on what you were talking about, look, we talk and we throw out stuff all the time on television, and we have a wonderful person like David Mossy that fact checks and makes sure that everything is online. And so there came a time, I think during the open of the show, where Rob Stone mentioned that. That Seattle were the only team, or who was he? What was the?
Well, I made the mistake. Let me give the context.
All right.
So, when I scripted the show on Saturday, I had a line in there that the Galaxy was the only team in the league to collect 6 points from their first 2 games, which was true at the time. But then RSL went and beat Sporting KC later on Saturday, so they had 6 points from 2 games, so that was no longer true. I meant to go back and change that, but I forgot. I was dealing with 50 other things on Sunday, and so that line stayed in there in the script. Rob said it. And then, was viciously attacked by Miss Yarrock on Twitter. And again, being the man that he is, he did not throw me under the bus. He took the blame for it. He said, my bad.
Well, look, and we know that, small market teams and little teams, they often feel that they are oppressed and downtrodden and ignored and not given the due that they deserve. So, but to be fair, I mean, we've talked a whole lot about RSL, so you can at least forgive us for a little mistake right there. And we've talked a whole lot about it. Now, it's been in the context of David Ochoa, your goalkeeper, kicking the ball into the stands. But listen, you take the press that you can get, and it's still early days, and you still only played 2 games as opposed to most other people that have played 3 games.
And I'm joking. She did not viciously.
Of course,
she was quite delightful.
She was wonderful. But she rightfully wanted to point out and let us know. And I think Rob cleaned it up later on. So.
And you mentioned the Ochoa thing. Then this weekend we had that Dallas-Portland Hollingshead throw-in at Savaresi's face. What's going on here? MLS this season, a lot of tension in the air.
I mean, or you could just say there's a lot of personality and entertainment out there. And Ryan Hollingshead with a throw-in actually tried to make Giovanni Savaresi, the coach of the Portland Timbers, flinch by pretending to do the throw-in right at his face. And I'll tell you what, look, I've known Gio for a long time, and you're going to have Mr. Holland said, you're going to have to step it up if you want to get a reaction out of him. He did not flinch one iota. It was amazing. And while Giovanni Savarese lost the game, he won that moment, because Dallas did go on to beat Portland. And look, a lot of the teams that are in CONCACAF Champions League, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, struggled. They rested players. They're getting ready for a very, very big week that we are starting this week in terms of CONCACAF Champions, and a week where they need all guns blazing, because it's not going to be easy. I'd also want to say, I mean, when we're starting to look now at the standings, and the standings are starting to tell a story. And I know it's still early days, but they are starting to tell a story. You mentioned San Jose, which, I had talked about at the beginning of the year, saying that Matias Almeida is under pressure, and I still think he's under pressure. But when you are going to, the fungus on the shower shoes thing, when you're going to play like that, you better get results, and he is getting results. And to your point, it's interesting and entertaining in the way that those results are happening, with some goals along the way and some young players along the way. The New England Revolution under Bruce Arena, sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference right now with 7 points with their three games played. This is a team that it looks like it's going to certainly be competitive through the year. I think that this is a team that, if everybody stays healthy, and Bo and Heel and these types of players continue on and stay healthy, they are going to be right there in the mix right now. So I don't think that this is any type of strange anomaly that we're seeing right now.
And one more for you. NYCFC with a 2-0 win over Philadelphia. Medina and Castellanos with the goals. They each have 3 goals this season. It's interesting with Castellanos. Palmeiras of Brazil, who I just mentioned a few minutes earlier, very interested in signing him. There have been loads of stories about it in the Brazilian media, including a story late last week, which indicated that Castellanos had informed NYCFC he wants to go, but they were reluctant to let him go because he's their only striker right now. Eber isn't due back until the summer. And I was texting with our good friend Ian Joy about it, and I sent him this article. And sure enough, Ian Joy tweeted about it. And it drew a response from NYCFC themselves, who felt the need to put out a statement about it, saying that under no circumstances were they going to let Castellanos go right now. And it's a smart move because he's playing great this season. He can't stop scoring. So, yeah, they got to hold on to that guy. But, yeah, so Ian Joy and I starting trouble on Twitter.
Wow. I didn't realize such what an incredible influencer you were out there. I mean, not the stroke of
Ian Joy, the host of the Joy to the World program, spreading positivity. And it's
well, yeah. I mean, and he's got to be real positive right now with the way that New York City has kicked off this campaign. Anything else stand out to you when it comes, before we get to El Trafico here, when it comes to the standings? Seattle in first place, like we mentioned, in the West. New England in first place in the East. Cincinnati, as we mentioned, in last place in the East, and Minnesota, the Loons, up there. Somebody asked me if this was a problem. I think it's a problem for Adrian Heath. I think that if this continues on, you talk about coaches on the hot seat, and it's been up and down from Adrian Heath, and coming off of a really positive year last year, there was an expectation that they were going to be around those competitive and elite type of teams. And they spent some money, that they have some new players, and so it's not for lack of ambition, it's not for lack of talent at their disposal, and they just can't seem to get it together out there. And so they lose again, and they lose at home. And I know the home situation for all of sports right now isn't what it is in normal times, but still there's an expectation. And I think there's still a fair expectation that when you're playing at home, you got to make sure that you are amassing as many points as possible. And 2 home losses in a row from Minnesota, and couple that with the very first game that they played of the year where they got crushed by Seattle in Seattle. It's just not looking good right now for the Loons. And so they're going to need a massive type of turnaround here to get back on course. Do you think, ultimately, before we go on here, Mossy, do you think that this is a fair indication of what the Loons are going to be in 2021? Or do you think this time, 3-4 months from now, we're talking about them in a very different light?
I think they'll turn it around. There's too much talent there, including Reynoso, who remains one of the handful greatest talents in the league right now. And Ramon Abila will get going. So I think they'll be all right in the long run. Okay.
All right. Should we talk a little bit about El Trafico, which is coming this Saturday?
Yep.
Okay. So first off, I think we should revisit the actual name of this. We know we talk about rivalries around the world, and some are young, some are old, some are manufactured. I guess they're all manufactured to a certain extent, whether they're being manufactured by big entities and corporation or whether they're being manufactured by humans. Ultimately, they are created out of things. Some of those things happen on the field, some things happen off the field, some of them things like this happen just because of geography. This has become a big game for the teams involved. In this case, it's the Los Angeles Galaxy and LAFC here in a big market, a market with lots of success, a lot of attention. And so this is a game that people want to watch. This is a game that people, even that don't even like the LAFC or the Los Angeles Galaxy, want to watch. El Trafico was the name that just kind of came about. It was an organic type of thing. And immediately when I heard it, I thought, this is great. This is wonderful. And it is stuck. Now, when I say it is stuck, there have been times and people over the years, including, really, great people and people that are directly involved, like a Bob Bradley, that don't really have an affinity for it in the way that I do. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's a wonderful moniker for this rivalry. It's back again. It's on Saturday. It's on Big Fox, as Rob Stone likes to say, Homer Simpson Fox. It is coming at a time when both of these teams, I think, want to stamp the 2021 season. Just in general, it's going to be a big game. But if the Galaxy, who we just finished talking about, where they may have been found out, if they follow up getting crushed up in Seattle by losing at home to their biggest rival in El Trafico, I think that that's going to be really problematic. Now, I'm not talking about firing coach problematic, but I think that it's going to really dampen the enthusiasm and the confidence that those first couple of games, those first couple of games had. From an LAFC perspective, they should look at the Los Angeles Galaxy, even going into the Galaxy home, as an opportunity for 3 points. I think if we went to Vegas right now, I think everybody, the safe bet would be on LAFC because of the talent that they have, because of how further along. Now, the question still remains whether we're going to see some of that talent on the field. We don't know if Carlos Vela will be on the field. And that's a big if, because he has proven over the last few years that he has his own drummer, okay? And he doesn't respond necessarily to the emotion and the passion and the excitement or the opportunity of something like El Trafico, or facing off against his countryman and former teammate and colleague Chicharito. And so I don't know if Carlos Vela is going to be available. I hope he is, because I want all guns blazing for this game this Saturday. How do you see this all playing out, Mossy?
Yeah, they did get Diego Rossi back this past weekend and 1-1 draw against Houston, and they're hoping for Vela back next week. You get those two guys back on the field together, and it's a whole different proposition. They've been kind of treading water so far this season. I continue to be impressed by this goalkeeper, Cisniega. Mm-hmm. They really found something there. But yeah, I mean, all things being equal, LAFC are the better team, and they would be favored. But because there's some question marks over who's going to play, and they're still in this kind of early season figuring things out kind of deal, then it makes for a more competitive match. So yeah, I'm excited for it. Should be a good one.
Are you thumbs up on El Trafico, just as the actual name of it?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it.
Well, why'd you have to think about it?
I mean, I'm not like overly enthused about it. I'm open to somebody coming up with a more clever name for it, but
well, you don't think that's clever? I think that's very clever. I mean, given our history of traffic and I think it's great.
It has a little bit of a different connotation that I don't want to go there, but I don't know.
Oh man, come on! I think it's wonderful, and I think we lean into it. Well, we're going to lead into it no matter what when it comes to what we do on Fox, and it's going to be fun. And look, if we have seen previous versions of El Trafico where there's been lots of goals, where there's been plenty of controversy and incredible moments and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully we have on tap. Now, we are very, very excited. When I say we, I mean our Fox crew, because for the first time we are actually going to be in stadium We will be on site for the game. And, as our world continues to open up more and more, hopefully there are more and more opportunities for us to get back into these natural settings. I know not with a completely full stadium yet, but hopefully we're heading in that direction where we can have these incredible communal experiences and be together. But at least this Saturday, it'll be really fun to actually see and be in that stadium and see it in person. Last year, we had one playoff game that we were there in Seattle, and there was no fans at all. And then MLS Cup, where there were just some fans when we went to Columbus, but very, very limited. And I think I'm not mistaken that this is the first time, because the Galaxy didn't have a chance last year to have fans. So this is the first time from an MLS perspective that they will be able to play in their own stadium in front of some fans since I guess the 2019 season, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be fun, Mossy. Are you looking forward to that?
I am, very much so, yes.
All right. Anything else when it comes to El Trafico?
That's it.
All right. Should we transition over, as I mentioned, to Concacaf Champions League, which we're back at it again. Now, here's the deal. And for those that may have forgotten, Atlanta versus Philadelphia, two MLS teams. Okay. Philadelphia went into Atlanta in the first leg, and I don't want to say crushed, but ultimately from a result perspective, they crushed them, winning 3-0 or in Atlanta. Unless something ridiculous happens, Philadelphia is going to go through. And we knew all along that, obviously, with two MLS teams, that at least one team was going to go to the semifinals. And if it's not Philadelphia, that would be an incredible accomplishment by Atlanta and an incredible failure by Philadelphia. We got done with the last round of games where I'm trying to think of a more optimistic moment when it came to the way that we were looking. And there were even people talking about, can we dream not just to win it, but maybe there's a possibility we have two MLS teams in the final. And yet we find ourselves here on this Monday when we are recording on Monday, May 3rd, and the games start tomorrow on Tuesday, where by the end of this week, it's a real good chance that we only have one, which was probably going to be Philadelphia. The other games were Toronto and Cruz Azul. Toronto playing at home, and when I say at home, it's actually in Florida for Toronto. They came out and laid an egg against Cruz Azul in the set piece fiasco that it was from a Toronto perspective, and Cruz Azul laid 3-0. Portland,
unlike Rob Stone, I have no problem throwing people under the bus. Our producer Jeff Hernandez has the wrong score in the rundown. It was actually 3-1.
Where? Okay, so there we go. 3-1. Sorry. Well, I mean, oh yes, they did get that one goal. So okay, there's a little sliver of hope there. But they lost at home. They lost by multiple goals, and they lost to Cruz Azul, which is, and I should know that too because I did that game. But it was an incredible set piece fiasco from Toronto. So hopefully they fix that. When it comes to Monterrey and Columbus had the win until the 94th minute when Monterrey tied it up 2-2. So they're going back down to Mexico with 2-2. I guess it's good, it's bad. I've heard arguments on both sides. And then Portland also at the death got a penalty and tied America 1-1. So they're going back down with a 1-1 score down to Mexico. And as I said before, if you're a betting person, all right, you're picking Philadelphia, you're picking Cruz Azul, you're picking Monterrey, and that's that's just for safe money, I guess. And you're picking America. I mean, are you going to pick against these Mexican teams playing at home? Now they're playing at home, but they're not playing in front of fans for the most part. What do you think what this looks like when this week is done, Mossy?
Well, Toronto Cruz Azul was the one matchup we didn't like from an MLS perspective. Mm-hmm. Toronto's still missing some key players. Pozuelo, Richie Larea missed his first leg due to suspension, so he'll be back for the second game. But Chris Mavinga missed the first leg. And obviously they haven't gotten Soteldo in yet, who was their recently big signing from Santos. And by the way, I didn't really comment on that on the podcast. It's a fantastic move and a real feather in MLS's cap to be able to sign a 23-year-old who was the star player of a Santos team that got to the Libertadores final last year. It's preposterous that Santos got 2 years out of him, considering they never spent a cent on him. It's one of the most farcical things I've seen in recent history. If you read about that transfer, they basically tricked this Chilean club into giving than Soteldo, and then never paid for him and ended up getting in trouble with FIFA over it, to the point where he's nominally a Santos player who spent the last 2 years with them, but the entire transfer fee Toronto paid went to the Chilean club. Santos didn't get any of it. But yeah, it's a blow to the Brazilian league to lose one of its most exciting players, and he goes to MLS. And so once Toronto get Pozuelo and Soteldo on the field together, they're going to be fine. I think there's a lot of talent, and under Chris Armas, they're going to be a very good team. But right now, they're just in a state of flux. Cruz Azul, they did leave Jonathan Rodriguez out from the start, their leading scorer, also a couple of other starters, but they started enough guys that was a pretty strong lineup. And as you mentioned, they controlled that game from start to finish, deservedly won 3-1. And that tie to me is effectively over. So you're really looking at the other two. Columbus really let a chance slip away, I thought, because of the three Mexican teams, Monterrey was the one that started the least full strength lineup. Now they brought on all their guys in the second half: Charlie Rodriguez, Celso Ortiz, Cesar Montes, Dorlan Pabon all came on. So they finished the game with a strong lineup, but they started with a pretty understrength team. And Columbus, I thought, could have capitalized on that better, and they should have won this game and taken a lead to Mexico. Instead, they surrendered that equalizer late. So 2-2, it's kind of a bummer. But this, to me, is the best shot from an MLS perspective. I have not been impressed with this Monterrey team all season long, and you know how high I am on Columbus. I think Columbus are absolutely capable of going there and winning. So this, to me, is the best shot from an MLS perspective of the three Liga MX versus MLS ties. And then, Portland, America. America started pretty much the strongest lineup they had at their disposal. They have a couple of guys out, including Cordova, who we watched in the Olympic qualifying. He's injured right now. But they pretty much started their strongest lineup, and Portland were able to eke out a draw. Now, what did you think of that penalty decision right in front of Merritt Paulson? I know some, like Keith Costigan, felt like there should have been a Portland foul in the lead up to that, so it shouldn't have been a penalty. Others thought, no, it was a good call. What did you make of all that craziness?
I mean, having endured and seen so much CONCACAF over the years, the fact that a Mexican team playing in Portland was CONCACAF to a certain extent. I mean, that would be, nobody would ever have looked at that as anything but CONCACAF-y if that had happened down in, in playing against a Mexican team in Mexico or other places. So yeah, I mean, you certainly could have called the push. For those that don't know, Merritt Paulson is the owner of the Portland Timbers, and while during the game he was standing behind the actual goal that what Portland was going at, and so there's this wonderful video of him, and he wears his heart on his sleeve when it comes to all things Portland, men's, women's soccer, and the city for that matter, and he's done a wonderful job. And by the way, we're going to talk more about ownership later on, but I think he's also done a really good job of recognizing his business responsibility and his fiscal responsibility to the club, but also endearing himself as someone who wants the best for his city and for his community, and he's using soccer and using this club to do that. And he's incredibly emotional and passionate, and you saw it. I mean, he almost willed that penalty to happen, screaming and yelling and pointing to the spot when he recognized that there was the possibility of this to happen. And he lives and breathes this stuff, and he loves his team and he loves his players. It was a really funny thing to see. To your point, Keith Costigan immediately tweeted about the possible push, and I booed him immediately, as did a lot of Portland people out there. And he said, "I'm never tweeting again about about that." But yes, it is. I still think that they're going to be. I still think that that's going to be a problem. I think the best chance, your best money of a MLS team from those three games that feature MLS teams versus the Mexican opposition is the Columbus team. And that's not really changing anything that a lot of people at the very beginning of this tournament said as to who has the best pathway and therefore who has the best shot of winning CONCACAF Champions League, given the talent that Columbus have. But it also would not surprise me in the least if we are sitting here come Friday and it's Philadelphia, and that's the team that you're looking at.
And by the way, Toronto had a bye this past week, and none of the other four teams that are involved in CCL won in MLS. They all rotated their squad. So yeah, focusing on CCL is detracting a little bit from the start of the MLS season for these teams. So, once they get done with CCL, it's done after this week until August, then they got to sort of refocus and kind of make up some of the lost ground here.
But that also highlights, and is a great example of, the parity and the competitive balance that you have in MLS, where, I mean, I don't know, pick a city or somebody else that can certainly rotate squads and rarely miss a beat, and there's very rarely a drop in that type of talent. But if you don't have all guns blazing in MLS, you can very, very quickly become a mediocre team and suffer when it comes to your league. And they they have to balance, and they have to weigh what they want to do. And certainly winning Concacaf Champions League and waving that flag, especially early in the season right now, getting these results is the priority. And it was obvious, as you said, in the way that these teams went about with the teams that they put on the field for the weekend games in MLS, preparing for these weekday games in CCL. Anything else, Mossy?
Nope.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to those games, and we'll see ultimately next week when we get back and lick our wounds, or who knows? We might be saying, wow, that was the most incredible week of CONCACAF Champions League. And who knows, maybe, Mossy, we have 4 MLS teams all going through. That would be something. But I'll take one. I will be really, really pleased with 2. Anything more than that is something has gone very, very, not wrong, but just wild in terms of the results. All right. We're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, oh yeah, we're going to hit the rest of the world, because the world was looking at the rest of the world, and in particular over there in England over the last week. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and we're going to take a trip around the rest of the world. And where do you think we're going to start? As I said, we didn't want to. We're not burying the lead, because this is a story of global proportion in terms of what happened on Sunday over in England, prior to the Manchester United-Liverpool game, a game that the world tunes into in normal circumstances, and the world was ready to tune into. And unfortunately, we didn't get the game. And that's a function of the events that went on before the game, and the protests that started outside the stadium with thousands of people, but ultimately spilled into the stadium. And that's where the real problems arose. Am I framing that correctly so far, Mossy?
Yeah, absolutely.
This was, very, very interesting. First off, as I said, this kind of transcended the sports world, okay? And a lot of people tuned in. I mean, you need only look at the numbers that are starting to come out in terms of the ratings. And when it comes to Sky Sports, this was something where it was, are you seeing what is happening over in England? Get to a television and check it out. And it was scenes, first off, as I said, outside, where protest and legitimate and non-violent protest by fans who feel that the Glazers, the longtime owners of Manchester United, are not doing things in the best interest of the club and the supporters in what they are doing and what they have done. And they wanted their voice heard, which I think everybody recognizes is completely legitimate and fair, and is to be protected, and is to be allowed. Problem is, then we start seeing pictures from inside the stadium of fans getting in, and fans basically breaking and entering, fans basically destroying property that is not theirs. And obviously, since the game was about to be televised, there's cameras everywhere picking this up. And credit and kudos to our friends over there at NBC. So we were watching it over here in the United States, and so we would be watching it on NBC, and Arlo White and crew and Rebecca and everybody over there. I think they did a really good job of going into news mode, if you will. And we had Arlo with his FaceTiming from different areas of the stadium and updating us on what was going on, because it was obviously a breach, a security breach, and a potential problem when it came to people getting hurt and violence. The stadium was not prepared for that. It was not being open to fans. And ultimately, these men, women, and I guess even some younger, I don't know if they're kids, but young adults, if you will, were able to get into the ground. And we see them going on the field, walking around the field, stealing and destroying and doing different things out there. And that was ultimately the story. And I've seen, so many people talk and lament the fact of, and rightfully so, that was the story. People breaking the law, when the story should have been thousands of people voicing their disapproval of the ownership of Manchester United. And we'll get into, the reasons for that. But that should have been the story. And instead it was these images beamed around the world of people breaking the law. And, there was some violence. Obviously there was destruction of property. Obviously there was, whatever you want to call it, people being where they are not supposed to be. And ultimately it resulted in the game getting postponed because there's, COVID protocols and all these different things, and obviously security issues when it comes to it. Mossy, when you woke up, you, like me, I think you were excited to watch this game and see what it was all about. And yet we were, subjected to these images. What were your initial thoughts when you saw, I guess, first off, the protests, which were planned, and people knew about the protests, that they were going to happen. But when you saw the size of the protests, and then obviously the breaking into the stadium and the leaking in of a number of quote unquote protesters into the stadium, breaking the law.
No, I mean, those were incredible scenes. I was gripped to the television for several hours, as you mentioned, following NBC's coverage of it. The way I look at it is all of us support peaceful protest and oppose breaking the law. But even when a protest goes too far and people start breaking the law, the level of condemnation is inexorably linked to whether you agree with the underlying reason for the protest. Not to get political, but there have been protests in this country in the last 12 months or so that I've looked at and said, okay, people went too far, but I understand their anger. And then there have been other protests in this country that I've looked at and said, not only did people go too far, but I think the reason for this protest is nonsense. And so it's just, the whole thing to me is completely ridiculous. Hold
on right there. Hold on right there. Okay. Because I've heard this argument too.
All right.
And I want to make sure I understand you, okay? Because if I understand you correctly, then I would push back and I would disagree in that all protests are not created equally, okay? What are we really protesting here when it comes to it, okay? This is not a political type of situation. This is not a life and death type of situation. We're protesting a sport. And I know at times when I break it down to that simple element of the fact that this is just a sport, people bristle out there. So when you talk about these other instances out there where you can understand why they are protesting, I think that those are very, very different types of situations and protests relative to a soccer team in which you don't like the owner because that owner you don't think is spending the money correctly or isn't spending enough money correctly on a sport where people run around and kick a ball. And so I hope that you are not validating what was done relative to these other protests that I think involve much bigger and much more all-encompassing type of questions and concerns and problems. And I think there has to be some perspective as to what this protest was framed around as opposed to others.
Right. But even looking at it from a sports context, if you think Manchester United fans have a legitimate gripe with the Glazers, you might analyze what happened a little bit differently than if you don't even agree with the premise behind the protest. That's my point.
Okay. Absolutely. Understand that. Understood.
So that's where we should go to next. I mean, to be fair to Manchester United fans, this is not a case of, oh, you love them when you win, you hate them when you lose. The Glazers bought the team in 2005, so they still caught a decent chunk of the Sir Alex era when United were winning Premier League titles every year and went to the Champions League final 3 out of 4 years and had super team and Ronaldo and Rooney running around. And they didn't like the Glazers back then. I've never heard a Manchester United fan say anything nice about the Glazers. They've always felt like they were winning in spite of them. And then obviously the relative lack of success since Sir Alex left has heightened the anger. And then evidently the Super League thing was the last straw. But so to be fair to United fans, it's not, one of these cases where, well, back when they were winning trophies, everybody was fine with the Glazers and now they've turned on them. There's always been some displeasure there in terms of the way they bought the team and all the debt that they accumulated and how they've taken profits from the club to pay for that debt. But
wait.
But still, they
broke in? They broke into.
I was going to say, does that validate in any way the behavior, or no? You think that that's still a complete overreaction?
No, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, and you're absolutely right that the caricature of the owners, which we all know is a trope. I mean, I get it, but it certainly has lived since the Glazers took over. That they are, that they are greedy corporate Americans that don't understand the game, have no respect for the game, has no respect for the supporters. I get all that, but even when they were protesting and winning, or whether it was the green and gold type of stuff or anything else that happened, it was within reason. It was even within the stadium, but they had paid to get into the stadium and they were making themselves heard. And ultimately, but I don't think that they haven't broken into a stadium or done something like that. And yes, I know, they might have gone to the chairman's house and stuff like that, but nothing like this though in the past, right?
No, yeah, this was next level. And it's interesting on the spending because just looking at it superficially, United do have the most expensive defender in history in Harry Maguire, the most expensive midfielder in history in Paul Pogba, and they have spent a lot of money on players the last several years. So when I look at why they've fallen behind Manchester City and Liverpool, to me, it's more an issue of incompetence rather than neglect. But I mean, United fans push back on that. They see the Glazers taking a lot of the profits from the club and putting it in their own pockets or using it to pay off the debt or to fund other projects. And they feel like there could be, I guess, even more spending going on, not only on players, but I read a lot the last couple of days about Old Trafford is in serious need of renovations and the stadium is falling apart and they haven't really taken care of that. And so, yeah, there is a sense that they're not spending.
So then what this really comes down to is that you're angry that your team isn't spending more money or as much money as others. Right?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, and in an effort to do so, your team would be better. And I know you said that even if they were winning, they would, that things wouldn't change or their attitude wouldn't change. I think that if Manchester United was looked upon in the way that we looked upon Liverpool last year, or the way that we look on Man City or something like that, and if they were winning the EPL or winning Champions League, I don't think that they would have stormed the stadium. Okay. And I think that things would be looked at a little bit differently. And like I said, what it really comes down to is that you want your team to spend more money. And when I say spend more money than your biggest rivals out there. And there's not many out there. To your point, they've spent lots of money, but you really want them to spend more money or spend as much money as, Sheikh Mansour or whoever is out there, right? I mean, because you want your team to win. So it really comes down
more
to
intelligently. There's a sense that the Glazers are sort of they're not really obsessed with winning, and so they just care about the business end of things. And so they appoint a guy like Ed Woodward who had more of a business background, and so that they, you look at the people that were making decisions at these other clubs, and they were just smarter, more thoughtful football people. And so that's contributed also to United falling behind.
Does this ultimately change anything? Do you think that the Glazers care about this? Do you think ultimately they make a decision? Somebody asked me this morning, do you think that this forces the Glazers to sell? And to your point, there is a history of them being painted as villains, right or wrong. You can have your different opinions, but so this is nothing. Well, this is new in what just happened, as we just explained, but that they are under pressure or that their names are being brought into disrepute and being talked about on television and in the newspapers and online in a critical type of way. That is nothing new to them. So why would this move them any more than anything in the past?
I don't know. I mean, you talk about it being a business and the fans being customers. When your customers are that unhappy, I think it's something that you have to look at. I mean, do they need this headache? I mean, they're riding high here in the United States. The Tampa Bay Bucks just won the Super Bowl, and I'm sure they could fetch a lot of money from Manchester United. And so I don't know. I think, you're watching these protests on TV and people burning American flags. And I think it's at least a conversation of, hey, is this worth the trouble anymore? Should we get out of this? That's
definitely a part of the conversation. I was having a talk with my son this morning and trying to explain some of the situation that was going on. And I had to frame it, like you said, where, what is value? There is value in a lot of different things. And it's not just simply a number. And the value of not having I guess to them, what might look like a headache. And once again, we're projecting. We have no idea. They might not care at all that this is happening. They'll just say, this is going to blow over like it always does, and we'll continue on with what we're doing. Or they might say, you know what? Let's sell it. We might not make as much as we thought we were going to make. But whatever that difference is, there is a peace of mind that comes with not having to deal with that craziness and not having to deal with the consistent criticism and not having to deal with our name being associated with so much criticism out there. And, I was explaining that to my son as to how they might go about it. And they might not do anything. But to your point about, customers and this product that they are selling, if you look at it from a business perspective, I think a lot of people can actually say, you still have one of the most popular and highly valued assets when it comes to a soccer team in the world, and an elite type of property that you have. But if it is that product that, as we are told, and as there are demonstrations out there, is not living up to whatever people believe it should be living up to, and so therefore it's an inferior product, why do you keep spending money on it? If these are these American corporate greedy villains out there, in that all they care about is the business and money, then why don't you hit them where it hurts? And I know over the years there has been an attempt to do that. But ultimately, if this is that product, don't buy that product anymore. And then see how they react. And then see if they make changes that are acceptable to you. And I'm not sure if people are willing to do that. And I know that it's not soap. I know it is something that's personal and that's emotional, and that there is a historical connection. But also, the fact that these villains are American, don't think for a second that doesn't play into this. I know there are people out there that disagree with me when it comes to that, but this plays in, and this makes people feel a whole lot more comfortable. And I think that this propels a lot more people to believe that what they are saying is right and what they are doing is right, because it is this villain that's not just the owners in the traditional sense, but it's American owners. And it comes on the heels, as you mentioned, of the Super League debacle that went down in flames, and that was once again framed as being an American way of doing things and an American system that was being forced upon an English and a European community that didn't want any part of that going on. And it's been fascinating. I did, when I say it's fascinating, I also, there are plenty of us that work in media that saw this for, once again, the content that it generated. And it was really interesting to see the frothing at the mouth of everybody as this went along. And, to your point, so many people coming down and saying, this is horrible, and the holier than thou, this stuff, and the hypocrisy and the sanctimony out there as people went about talking about this stuff, and the content that was just generated on a continual basis out there. And there were certain, I'm sure, folks out there in our business that were much more content and excited to talk about this than they were about the kicking of the game. This is much sexier. If it bleeds, it leads. If it's got this ready-made American villain in something like that, and then you have these pictures and these incredibly surreal pictures of people going on the field and destroying property. And in doing so, oftentimes the way in which they acted negated a lot of whatever sympathy they were going to garner. Posing for selfies and taking pictures, and the performative aspect of it was, while it was nauseating, it was not surprising. Because to your point, we've seen it. People, especially when we get involved in groups, people will, that group think, and that, that mentality where as an individual, you wouldn't necessarily do it, but when so many people are doing it, you get caught up in it. And you don't realize or recognize the ramifications of what you are doing. And you're not ultimately, when it comes right down to it, really that angry about something. Or you don't even know what you're angry about. You just thought it would be cool to break stuff. You just thought it would be cool to be someplace where you're not allowed to be. And you've known since you were a kid that it's wrong. And you've known since you were a kid that you were going to get in trouble, and yet you can't help yourself. And that's why I tell my kids all the time, listen, Dad, why do you remind us constantly about this or that? And I say, because there's going to come a point in your life, okay, where I'm not going to be there, where you're going to have to make an individual choice as to what you want to do. And it may be really, really hard, because you and your friends and the group that you're hanging out with may want to do one thing. And you know that in your mind and in your heart, that is the wrong thing to do. And you're going to have to stand up. And in doing so, you're going to have to almost ostracize yourself from that group and be an individual and say, no, that's not something that I want to be a part of. That is wrong. And I know it's hard, because we've all been there, and we've all succumbed to peer pressure out there. And we've all been in parts of groups where everything that we are taught tells us that it is wrong. And somehow we still get involved in something like that. I understand that, but that's where you have to be your strongest. That's where you have to stand up and say, no, I have a reason why I'm here, and I'm peacefully protesting, or I'm doing this, and that's a bridge too far, and I'm not going to do that. And I don't care if it makes me look uncool. I don't care if it costs me friendships. I don't care how it makes me look, because I know that I'm going to do that. And I recognize that that's hard. And it's especially hard when you're younger and you want to fit in and you want to be part of a group. But anyway, Mossy, we'll see how this ultimately, at some point we're going to have this game that we were all kind of waiting for, and it does have ramifications. We know Man City's going to win. Everyone's jockeying for position up there when it comes to the EPL, but I don't think that this is necessarily going to stop. I don't think that the protests are going to stop. I don't think that the pleading, if you will, to have a voice. And Mossy, before we go, I'm sorry I'm going on about this, but it got me thinking about so many different things, because I heard this phrase of the supporters don't have a voice. And so I want to know what that voice is, because a lot of times it'll be framed in, we don't want them making choices on what players we sign, or what coaches we sign, or who's in the front office, or anything like that, but they want to feel like they're part of it. And how does that manifest? How do you go about doing something like that? They are not the owners per se. Okay. It's not their job what's going on. And yet there is this sense of ownership. And yes, I'm going to say it, at times there is a sense of entitlement that almost is unique to sports, in that people feel like they should be consulted. They should be part of the decision-making process. And I'm not saying that's bad, okay? And I'm not saying that owners shouldn't recognize that and find a way to do that. But I'm left to wonder, what does that ultimately look like when it comes to being involved with your club and being part of what your club is going on without actually making decisions? And maybe it's just, judging the situation or making people feel like they're a part of it, whether they're a part of it or not.
Yeah, this is going to be the Zack Snyder cut of the State of the Union podcast this week. This
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
I think most of our listeners will get the reference. So that was a story in England this weekend, overshadowed anything that actually went on the field. In Germany, Dortmund and Leipzig each won their German Cup semifinals. Gio Reyna scored twice in Dortmund's victory, so that sets up a very tasty German Cup final. May 13th, Leipzig against Dortmund. But the big story was off the field. Julian Nagelsmann is headed to Bayern Munich to replace Hansi Flick. And replacing Julian Nagelsmann at Leipzig is American Jesse Marsch. Your thoughts?
Well, first off, congratulations to Jesse Marsch. He is going where no man or woman has ever gone before in terms of an American coaching, and the specific American that he is, I should say, because, this is a guy that had the traditional and classic American upbringing, growing up in Wisconsin, playing youth soccer, playing high school soccer, going on to play and go to school in college at Princeton, going on to Major League Soccer, where he had a successful career, becoming a Major League Soccer coach, being an assistant coach, coming from the Bob Bradley coaching tree, all that kind of stuff. And now he finds himself in the Bundesliga. It's wonderful. It's wonderful for him. I'm so happy for him and for his family and for this opportunity that he is getting. I think it is important for the perception of American soccer, and in particular for the perception of the American soccer coach. But it also should be pointed out that he was given opportunity and advantages that most American coaches don't have. And look, here, this is what it comes down to. That's not a knock on him. I know in this day and age where you have to admit and be thankful for, and even at times maybe even apologize for the advantages or the privileges that you have. Look, we all have different advantages and privileges along the way. We all have different opportunities that are afforded to us that might not be afforded to others. And you make some of your own luck, and you take and recognize those opportunities that you have. And Jesse Marsch getting involved in the Red Bulls system, without a doubt, if that doesn't happen, I'm not sure Jesse Marsch is where he is. As a matter of fact, I don't think he is where he is. Even if you look at someone like Bob Bradley, who was the last kind of person to be doing it at that level, he parlayed the international success that he had into those opportunities. Jesse Marsch, in the same way that, look, there's no way I would have played in Serie A without the World Cup. And yet we are seeing players now at a young age go over and do great things. Jesse Marsch used Red Bull in the best possible way. And once again, I don't begrudge him, but I think it is important, because I was asked a question about coaching and American coaches out there. And my good friend Roger Bennett actually put out a tweet where he was praising Jesse Marsch, but also praising, his, and I don't have the tweet in front of me, but he was praising what he saw was a willingness for Jesse Marsch to take risks and to go where no others have gone. And my point was, I think there's a lot of American coaches that would love to be quote unquote risk takers out there, but they don't have that pathway, and they don't have that machine that is Red Bulls that facilitated all of these moves in a way that wouldn't have been available to Jesse Marsch if he hadn't. And once again, it doesn't mean that Jesse Marsch isn't not only a good coach, but potentially a great coach. But he used what was at his disposal. And Jesse Marsch is not only a good coach and a good man, he's also a smart man. And he recognized that this was a back door into a very select and elite, and for American coaches, pretty much closed system over there in terms of coaching. And well done, Jesse, for finding that back door and getting in there. So Jesse Marsch, Racing, Wisconsin. Or Racing? Is it Racing or Racing? What is it over there in Wisconsin? I should know this, but I don't. And then in the Bundesliga, from Racing Wisconsin all the way to the Bundesliga. So absolutely incredible how far he has come. And now, like any coach, he's going to be under pressure, because this is a team that has aspirations of winning the Bundesliga. Well, in order to do that, you have to beat the Goliath that is Bayern Munich. Not easy. And keep in mind that Jesse Marsch was a former assistant coach at RB Leipzig. So he certainly knows the setup there and he knows the expectations. And whether he's American or not, he's going to be judged relative to those expectations right there. What did you think when you heard about this, Mossy?
No, it's great news. It's interesting because being the Salzburg coach doesn't automatically mean that Leipzig will be your next step. Jesse Marsch's predecessor at Salzburg, Marco Rose, parlayed success there into a job with Gladbach and now Borussia Dortmund. And Jesse Marsch was mentioned as a candidate at Dortmund. And had he been offered that job, I think he would have taken it and Red Bull wouldn't have stood in his way. But when you see his whole trajectory from coaching New York Red Bulls to being an assistant with Leipzig, as you mentioned, this is the logical next step. It makes perfect sense to me. And I think he'll do very well.
I just, and the only reason that I brought up, the Roger Bennett tweet was, in this day and age where we are, I think, rightfully celebrating the players and now, the coaches that we have that are Americans that are doing, I think part of the conversation has to be how it all ultimately happened. And it doesn't mean that there isn't quality that exists that didn't get that opportunity. And oftentimes we'll talk about it with players. For example, if you have a European community passport, you have an advantage. And you might be, there might be another player who is as good or maybe even better than you that doesn't have that advantage, that didn't get those opportunities. And so while we, as I said, rightfully celebrate what they are doing and the potential for them opening up hearts and minds and opening up pathways so that that next person has that ability to do so, there are also, even Christian Pulisic along the way. Okay. So that these have to be, I think those have to be part of the stories here. And once again, it's not to tear anybody's accomplishments down or anything like that. But I just think that there's so much more quality that's there that if given the opportunity, I think could really, really do some great things. And whether it's individual players or whether it's coaches out there, somebody asked me about Jim Curtin over there in Philadelphia, and he's still a young, relatively inexperienced coach, but he's certainly had success, albeit in one place. There's nothing that says to me that a Jim Curtin, if given the same type of opportunities that Red Bull has given a Jesse Marsch, he couldn't have the same type of trajectory or the same type of success, or even go over there and, there's not some magical, mystical type of game that is being played over there that means that either players or coaches can't have success over there. There's plenty of coaches and players that could have success over there. Yes, they have to adapt and to adjust to a new culture, both on and off the field. But that's always going to be the case. And I actually think, look at someone like Jesse Marsch, who, he traveled the world. He has studied, he has been a sponge and absorbed a whole lot from a lot of different people. He is good at multiple languages and has immersed himself in and when he talks about the importance of language, I think it's so important for people to hear that because it enables you to communicate, obviously, but it confirms a level of respect to the people and to the country and the culture in which you are applying your trade. And I think all that kind of stuff is so important. I think there's a lot of other people's, if they were a lot of other people out there and coaches out there that if given that opportunity could be really, really successful. And they just haven't had that opportunity in the past.
Just one quick note on Nagelsmann before we move on. Bayern reportedly paying 25 million euros to get him out of his Leipzig contract, by far the most compensation ever paid for a manager, which raised some eyebrows because Bayern Munich, as super clubs go, don't throw money around willy-nilly. Their one indulgence in recent years was that Lucas Hernandez buyout fee. But Kevin Hatchard, who's a Bundesliga announcer, tweeted something that I thought was kind of interesting. He said, we all need to adjust our thinking with that because, nobody would bat an eye if a big club spent 25 million euros on just a good contributing player. And yet when you spend that kind of money on a manager, we all think it's crazy, but isn't a manager and getting the right guy more important than just, one contributing player in a squad? So what's the big deal about spending this kind of money if you think he's the right guy?
If Chelsea had to spend 25 million for Tuchel, don't you think that they would look at that as a good investment?
Absolutely.
Given where they are right now? Yeah. If you truly believe that a manager is fundamental to changing your fortunes and winning more games, then yeah, you would certainly look at it as money well spent. So yeah, I understand that, but like anything, and we've talked so much about it, it's not even it's not even the money that's being spent, it's how the money is being spent. And if you are spending that money in a smart way, yeah, I mean, I think that they looked at it as this can fundamentally change the way that we play with what we have, but also can be a recruiting tool if players that want to come and play for him. And so, yeah, I think once again, we're talking about a valuation of something that isn't just dollars and cents or money out there, the value that a coach can bring, and how you put a valuation on something like that. What else, Moss?
So moving on to Italy, where Inter clinched the Serie A title this past week, and they beat Crotone 2-0 on Saturday, and Atalanta's 1-1 draw with Sassuolo on Sunday meant that Inter secured the title. They end Juve's run. Juve had won 9 in a row. For Inter, it's their first Serie A title since 2010. A couple thoughts here. First off, Antonio Conte, he's a pain in the ass, but that guy can coach. Hasn't had success in the Champions League, but man, in terms of domestic leagues, he's been terrific. And also, as the Premier League has grown into this monolith and become by far the most prestigious league in the world, these other leagues have had to find different things to sort of cling to and take pride in. We know in Germany, it's the ownership. They love that 50+1 model. That they like the fact that they're not beholden to Arab sheiks or Russian oligarchs or American capitalist fat cats. In Italy, it's all about the managers. They point to the fact that the Premier League, they need to import managers like Pep and Klopp and Mourinho as a sign of weakness, while in Italy, they can still produce great managers. And it is interesting that not since Inter's previous title in 2010, which was won by Jose Mourinho, a foreign manager hasn't won Serie A since then. The following season, Allegri won it with AC Milan. Then Conte won it 3 seasons in a row with Juventus. Then Allegri won it 5 seasons in a row with Juventus. Then Sarri won one with Juventus. And now Conte with Inter Milan. And if you look at the top 6 in the standings this season, it's all Italian managers. It's Conte at Inter. It's Gasperini at Atalanta. It's Pirlo at Juventus. It's Pioli at Milan. It's Gattuso at Napoli. It's Simone Inzaghi at Lazio. And so you have to get down all the way to Rome at 7th to find a foreign manager. So it is kind of interesting how Italy, they take great pride in their ability to produce managers, and it's really reflected in Serie A.
Well, that's just because Jesse Marsch has yet to be named the head coach of AC Milan, all right, and to take them back to the lofty heights. Congratulations, by the way, to Inter. We talked so much about Juventus and the dominance that is Juve. So I think that's important. I think it's important for not just for Inter, but I think it's important as we go on. And look, we've talked a whole lot about the top heaviness of leagues, and it doesn't mean that it's overnight changed, but this is a nice change. This is a needed change for any league, and certainly for a league like Serie A.
And so now the focus shifts to top 4. So below Inter, you've got Atalanta at 69, Juve at 69, AC Milan at 69, Napoli at 67, and even Lazio at 64, but with one fewer game than everybody else. So they're in the mix as well. And you look at this from a Juve perspective, you bring in Andrea Pirlo, you crash out in the round of 16 of the Champions League, losing to Porto, and then you don't win Serie A for the first time in 10 seasons. So it's already been a catastrophic season. And then the idea that they could finish outside the top 4, which is entirely possible, and miss out on the Champions League next season, that's just mind-blowing.
It is. And it would be problematic. But unlike Chelsea, which said, this is not going the way that we want it to, and we're going to try to fix it before it becomes an unfixable problem. I mean, they hitched their cart at Juve, right? So they're going to ride this one out. And there still might be a change, but this is not good. This has not been good for Pirlo. And look, he's young and he's inexperienced and he's trying to figure it out as it goes along. But and this is when you come in with so much success, and then you are associated with the moment where that success is not there, that expected success, then it doesn't matter who you are. But certainly, if you're a younger manager, it would not surprise me in the least if there is a change.
And then in Spain, I'm going to take this back to last Thursday because Barcelona had played one game fewer than everybody else. So they made up that game on Thursday, home to Granada. Everybody expected them to win that game, which would have leapfrogged them above Atletico Madrid with 5 rounds to go. Instead, they shockingly lost at home. So they stayed 2 points back of Atletico and level with Real Madrid. And then Atletico, Real Madrid, and Barcelona all won over the weekend. Atletico beat Elche 1-0, Real beat Osasuna 2-0, and Barcelona had a nice bounce back win 3-2 over Valencia. Messi with 2 goals. Griezmann got the other. Griezmann's really turned the corner there. He's been phenomenal the last few months. So now it leaves it with 4 rounds to play. Atletico at 76, Real Madrid at 74, Barcelona at 74. Keep in mind, Sevilla play today against Athletic Bilbao. If they win that, they go to 73. So the Spanish media is treating this as if it's a 4-team race, and it couldn't have set up better for next weekend, because you have Barcelona hosting Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid hosting Sevilla. So you have the top 4 going head to head. So Spain setting up for a thrilling finish.
Wow. Do you think... Okay, yeah. I mean, so yeah, Sevilla's playing later on today. We're recording this. The game hasn't kicked off yet, I can see here. But if they beat Bilbao, they go to 73. Yeah. I mean, they can make things really interesting. Oh my goodness. This is good. Once again, this is good. This is good for Europe and for the perception, and obviously for the Liga.
And the other great races in France where Lille and PSG both won. So Lille are still 1 point up with 3 to play. It's looking like a distinct possibility they're going to win Liga instead of PSG, which is pretty crazy. And speaking of PSG, we'll end on the Champions League second leg semifinals coming up this week. That first leg between PSG and Manchester City was a remarkable game. You talk about a tale of 2 halves, because in the first 45 minutes, PSG had no issue breaking that press, created all sorts of problems for Manchester City. Neymar and Di Maria were buzzing around. I thought they were good value for that halftime lead. They were the better team in the first half, up 1-0 at the break. And then what happened in the second half? Man City did make some adjustments. They moved the press even a little bit higher and pressed even more aggressively, and completely smothered PSG, who are a team that's committed to playing out of the back. God forbid at some point in that second half, a PSG defender had maybe lifted his head up and tried to play a long ball to Mbappe or something.
How dare you? How dare you?
No, they kept trying to pass their way through it every time and could not do it. They could not get out of their defensive third. It took Neymar and Mbappe completely out of the game. They barely touched the ball in the second half. And Man City kept taking the ball away. So it basically turned into an offense versus defense drill the last 45 minutes. And yeah, there was an element of fortune to both goals. De Bruyne floats this cross in, and Navas misjudges it, and it goes in. And then Riyad Mahrez with that free kick that somehow goes through the wall. But still, you felt like City deserved that, because they were completely dominant in that second half. And so they take it 2-1, and they're now in the driver's seat to go to the final.
Well, I mean, here's the most important question. Do either of these teams that are obviously were positive, whether it's Man City or Chelsea, does this get overturned in the second leg?
I don't think so. Yeah, the other game finished 1-1 between Real Madrid and Chelsea, and you felt like Chelsea kind of let Real Madrid off the hook a little bit. Mm-hmm. They took the lead. Wonderful goal from Pulisic, who showed such composure the way he rounded Courtois, and then Benzema equalizes with an acrobatic finish. But yeah, the thing is, not only did the 2 away teams get good results in the first leg, but it wasn't like a smash and grab. They felt like the better teams watching those games. So you have to favor them in the second leg. So yeah, I think there's a very good chance we're headed for an all-English final in the Champions League and potentially in the Europa League as well. United are definitely through the final. They beat Roma 6-2 in the first leg of that semi. And then Arsenal have some work to do because they lost away to Villarreal 2-1, but they could come back and beat them at home. So yeah, I mean, we had that in 2019 when it was Liverpool, Tottenham in the Champions League final, Chelsea, Arsenal in the Europa. And we could be very well headed again for a clean sweep here of English finalists in the 2 major competitions.
Oh boy, you think they're insufferable now. Well, I'll be interested to see. I mean, it would not Real Madrid. I'm not sure PSG can do it, but I'd put some money on Real Madrid. Yeah,
it's possible. Varane out, but Ramos available, so he'll probably start alongside Militão. And then there's a question over Hazard or Vinicius. Is Hazard fit enough to start, or is he going to go with Vinicius and bring Hazard off the bench? I expect Pulisic to start for Chelsea. By the way, these 4 English sides are poised to reach European finals. 2 of them owned by Americans, Glazer and Kroenke, and then Abramovich owns Chelsea, and obviously the Abu Dhabi group owns Manchester City. So, man, these foreign owners.
Yeah, you love their money when you're winning, right? All right. What else? Mossy, anything else?
That is it.
All right. But before we go, and we touched on it, but it was a wonderful moment to see Christian Pulisic score. And obviously he has the opportunity to play in a Champions League final. And knock on wood, because we always have to knock on wood when it comes to Christian Pulisic, that he stays healthy, and that he has, if he has that opportunity, that from a physical perspective, he is there.
He is the subject of an AskAlexi question, so you can save your
okay.
your powder dry for that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, as you mentioned, we will be back with AskAlexi, so don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. AskAlexi, you send in those questions, comments, concerns out there, and each week we pick a few of them. What do we got this week, Mossy?
Well, first up, you tweeted about Christian Pulisic's nice goal against Real Madrid in the Champions League semifinal. And so a fellow by the name of Wanderer wrote to you, is he the best American player ever?
No. Christian Pulisic is not the best American player ever. And look, if you want to get all detailed about it, first off, you would have to say that you would have to include, people like Mia Hamm. Okay, so let's limit it to the best male American soccer player ever, and the answer is still no. Okay, I think that you have to have, when it comes to the best male American soccer player ever, a resume that includes success and impact in both your club exploits and your international part. Now, obviously, Christian Pulisic was part of the failed effort to qualify for the last World Cup, and so he's never actually played in a World Cup and led the team in a World Cup. Knock on wood again, he is there and leading us into 2022 next November in Qatar. But until he does that, I don't think, and this isn't a situation like a gigs or something where you don't have the opportunity. I mean, hell, each week we get on this show and we talk about the incredible amount of talent and the expectation that we have had since, notwithstanding what happened in 2017, but all the way back to 1990 of qualifying out of Concacaf. And it should be, at the very least, our minimum expectation is qualify. So this isn't a situation where we're never going to see him just because he doesn't play on a good enough national team. And he is part of that national team, and it's part of his job to create that opportunity for himself and others to play in a World Cup. I still think when it comes to the men's side that it is, for me, Landon Donovan, because he did have that proper combination. And I know people take off points because he didn't, quote unquote, do it in Europe, okay, in the way that, I don't know, a Clint Dempsey or a Tim Howard or somebody else did over there. But I just think that the impact that he made from a club perspective and what he did, and when it comes to the international perspective, and the impact both on the field and off the field, okay, puts him at puts him much higher in my book. And look, what he's doing right now, Christian Pulisic, is wonderful. I get excited. I jump up and down. I wave my American flag because it's an American who grew up, doing the stuff that American kids do. And now he's at the highest level when it comes to a club situation. And not only is he there, but he's playing and he's starring and he's scoring goals and doing all that kind of stuff. That's great. But he still has a way to go to fill out that resume. He keeps doing what he's doing. I think he will. And I absolutely think that if he does that type of stuff, that I would have no problem calling him the best ever until somebody else better comes along. So yeah, to your question, yeah, I think it's Landon Donovan still for me. Nobody has come along yet that has eclipsed what Landon Donovan has done and that resume that he put together with those two sides that I do think are important when we talk about the greatest of all time, the GOAT.
Next up, Brock E. If the USL adopted Pro Rel, would it become the league to watch instead of MLS?
So, Pro Rel drink, Evergreen, all that kind of stuff. The reason why I think this question came about, I can't remember exactly, but I anticipate and think that the reason why this question came about was, we were talking about Major League Soccer and, my contention that I have no problem with promotion relegation. I have lived it, and I have lived the power of what promotion relegation is. So I know firsthand what it's all about. It can be incredibly exciting. It can elicit incredible emotions and passion, but I don't need it to enjoy my soccer, and I don't think it should be mandated on everyone. And there's a lot of folks out there that believe it is this silver bullet, believe that it is this magical elixir that will solve all the ills. and I'm being a little flip, but there's certainly a lot of people that feel that this is a missing component. And there's a lot of people that point to that, and that specifically as their reason for not watching Major League Soccer or NWSL or other quote unquote closed leagues out there. So if that is the case, then that would be a simple type of fix for someone to come along and offer to the masses out there that are not partaking because of the lack of promotion relegation. And so USL is ripe. They have plenty of teams. They already have a tiered system within the USL format that they can certainly do something like that. And if it is the case that that is what the market is craving, and that is the product that soccer people out there want, because we've said plenty of times that MLS's problem isn't that there aren't soccer fans out there. It's that there's not enough MLS fans out there. If this is the missing component, then it should be attractive, and it should attract big numbers that want that as part of their week in and week out experience, having that element and that component of promotion relegation. Now, do I think that if that were to happen in a USL form, that would be this seminal type of moment and that migration would happen? I don't know. I don't think so necessarily. And MLS has positioned itself and qualifies from the sanctions as a Division One, but it also doesn't preclude having multiple Division One sanctions. So USL could, within their model, be sanctioned as Division One and be looked at and have that with whatever value there is to that, and also have promotion relegation. We've also talked about Major League Soccer having an MLS 1 and an MLS 2. All of this, though, is not necessarily what traditional and classic type of pro-rel advocates and zealots out there want. They want it to be mandated. They want everybody to be involved and have that completely open system and have the promotion relegation within that. I would like to see that, because as I've said before, if USL did that tomorrow, I would 100% back it and support it and be its biggest champion. Because I want people to challenge. I want people to challenge the norms. I want people to compete. I want there to be competition with what Major League Soccer has put out there to the public as a product. And if it is a better product, then people will gravitate to it. And I will make sure that people know about it. And as I said before, I will be its biggest fan, as I am a big fan of what Major League Soccer is. And I think I can do both and let the best product win out. Anyway, I think I answered that to a certain extent. I don't think that it would be the success that people think it would be initially, but I would partake in it. I would, as I said, I would champion it, and I would make sure that people knew about it as this new product entering the market.
And we'll end with I'll call this a fun one. You during the Manchester United protests, you tweeted, "Why exactly do you want them out?" Meaning the Glazers. And so a fellow named Otis Lyons replied, "Dear Alexi, how do you have a job? I knew I should have spat in your face instead of taking a picture with you in 2017. That one's on me."
Wow. What was his name? Let's see here.
Otis Lyons.
Otis. All right, Otis. You are probably not alone. There are plenty of people that over the years I have taken pictures with, signed autographs with, spent some time with. And then, as the years go by on a podcast, on television, I may have said something that they completely disagree with. And they may so adamantly have and vehemently have disagreed with what I said that it has made them rethink the way they view me. That's okay. That's fine. Go in peace. All right. I wish you well. That my opinion about a sport and the business of this sport has led to you reassessing your views on me, so much so that if we came across each other, you would feel that it was appropriate to spit at me because I have the audacity to support MLS or say that I don't need promotion relegation, or talk about things as a business, or have the audacity to actually ask the question, what is it exactly that you want changed? Or what is it exactly that you are protesting or advocating for? And actually having people articulate what it is that they are so angry about that makes them do things or say things. Then if that's your problem, then guilty as charged. I still hope that if we came across each other as human beings living on this earth together in 2021, that we could find a way to disagree and still be civil and still be cordial and still be respectable. But that you think that this is something that not only you would do, but that it is the right thing to do, given my opinions about soccer, probably says a whole lot more about you. I hope that it never comes to that, because, as we continue to open up, I will obviously, like everybody, be interacting a whole lot more. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy being out there and talking to people. And there's a very different type of dynamic that exists when human beings talk face to face, when you're not behind a keyboard, when you're not behind a telephone. And it changes very much the tone of the conversations that we have. And I miss that. I miss that type of interaction. And as I've said plenty of times, I often learn much more from the interactions and the conversations that I have than probably you or anybody else out there do. But I'm sorry that you feel that way about me. Once again, it is a sport where we kick a ball around, and it doesn't mean it can't be incredibly important and you can't have emotion attached to it. But it's still just a sport, and that it has gotten you to a point where you feel that it's appropriate, or that would have been appropriate, or that you would want to spit on me because of my soccer opinions. That's probably, you should probably see somebody about that. Anyway, Mossy, anything else?
That is it.
All right, we're going to take another quick break, and when I come back, I will have my one for the road. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back, and it's time for one for the road, because it is the end of the pod. We get different correspondence, Mossy, and I'm not going to read this email that I got, but I will let you know that a good friend of mine and someone that I admire a tremendous amount reached out to me to tell me how much he enjoys and listens to the pod. And that would be Shep Messing, a American soccer legend, a wonderful player, a really, really interesting and intelligent man. And certainly many of you know him from his media work too. He has an incredible history. If you ever get a chance to sit down and talk to him, do it, because he thinks about the game in a different way. He thinks about life in a different way. But anyway, he reached out and sent a really kind and generous email to me talking about how much he enjoys listening to the pod. And I don't think that I'm betraying any trust by telling you that he did that. And he probably sends it to a lot of different people that he listens to out there. And I'm not going to tell you the content of it, but it made me realize, because when I think about someone like Shep Messing, I am from a later generation of American soccer. And even now I'm 50 years old and I'm looked at as an older generation. There's a whole other generation that came before me. And, I don't do what I do without the likes of someone like Shep Messing. And we talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. And, Shep Messing with the NASL and that Wild West type of existence that was about in the 70s and 80s when it came to American soccer. He was one of the original American soccer stars. And for a whole generation who grew up watching what came before Major League Soccer from a men's perspective, he was an American soccer star. And there weren't a lot of them out there, and certainly much fewer. And it was much harder to get in front of everybody back then. And so, he lived the life of an American soccer star on and off the field. And I and my generation came along after. And he never had the opportunity to experience the things and the benefits of all the work that he and so many others did on and off the field. I reaped those benefits in the same way that that next generation has reaped the benefits and the work. And it's real easy to get bitter and resentful and jealous of what comes after you, because if you're doing it right, it's much better. And yet, I don't think that Shep Messing or a lot of that generation has done that. I think they, like my generation, have taken an immense pride and satisfaction that the work that they did led to the improvement and led to better facilities and led to better coaching and led to better environments and led to better opportunities and better leagues and teams and all of these different things that we talk about. In the same way that when I look at this next generation, I take incredible pride and take heart in the fact that there's a whole generation that doesn't have to go through the struggles that I went through when it comes to being involved in soccer. And, you know, we were talking earlier when we started the pod talking about 17-year-olds that are coming about. And there will become a time when they are 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds, and they will look at what the sport has become in their country where they grew up playing, and they will be amazed. And there maybe even will be a tendency to be a little bit jealous about it. And hopefully they will, like previous generations, whether it's my generation or whether it's Shep Messing's generation, they will take heart that they made it better. And, you know, that exists all over. We all want it better for our kids, just in life in general. And so we, as the mothers and fathers of soccer, want it better for our kids in the soccer world. And it is getting better. And it's growing each and every year. But it's built on all of this history, much of it that we know and much of it that we don't know when it comes to the stories and the people and the personalities and people like Shep Messing. And so I guess it's just a thanks to him, first off, for listening and enjoying this and reaching out and in an incredibly eloquent and kind way expressing that. But also a thanks to everything that he and so many others did to make my life easier as a soccer player and to continue to pass it on to that next generation as we get bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, from what he does on television, when he comes on, I make sure that I listen because there's always something interesting. Again, I don't have to agree or disagree, but there's always something interesting. He recognizes that he's in the entertainment industry, and there is always something intelligent and entertaining and oftentimes informative when he talks about the game. And that's what I love about him in present day. And what I love about him in terms of the life that he has lived is how much he has given to the game of soccer. And we all meander and we go up and down and we have good times and we have bad times on and off the field, like any life. But thank you, Shep. And thank you to everybody that came before me that made it easier for me. Anything else, Mossy, before we head out?
That's it.
I know this was a little longer of a podcast and I went, went off on a couple tangents there. But we talk about this game that we love, and it has so many different connections that sometimes have nothing to do necessarily with kicking the ball and the, politics and society and culture and all these different things. And so it brings up different feelings and emotions and conversations and debates out there that sometimes are directly tied and sometimes are indirectly tied to the things that we see that happen in our game. But it's amazing. Every week, Mossy, there's something new that's going on when it comes to our game. And I know we only scratch the surface here at the State of the Union pod, but we hope that you enjoy the things that we are doing as we give you a little synopsis of things that are going on in the world. And it's just a synopsis because there's a whole lot of other stuff that either don't register with us or on our radar, or we just don't have time to get to, even though we've gone a little long today. So thank you very much for staying with us almost to 2 hours. Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you for reviewing and subscribing and downloading and doing all the different things that you do out there when it comes to the State of the Union. We will be back again next week at the same time, same place. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.